valid point and such a good point. The consumer behavior, the consumer is demanding more. And I think since COVID, what we've noticed across board in the industry is that people are going out less, but when they are going out, they're wanting a more unique experience and they're wanting this wow experience. And it seems quite a catch-22 because there's less money then going into the industry to make these wow experiences because people are going out less. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like a governmental level, what do you think needs to be done in the UK to support the industry?
You know, it's happening in Europe where there is a VAT relief. I think, I'm not being overly critical of the industry, there was a bit of miscommunication, or probably we didn't help ourselves. So, you know, I work very closely with the NTIA. So obviously they did a big campaign around VAT relief for 7.5%, so they wanted 12.5%. VAT, and then we as an industry went for 5%, so 15% relief. But again, you know, when you're speaking to government departments like DCMS, it is quite confusing. It's like, well, you know, aren't you part of the same industry? You're asking for different numbers. I think, you know, ideally we'd come together and, you know, agree a number that we can take to government. And, you know, we've got lots of data to support the fact that with that relief, more shows will survive. We've lost 74 shows this summer in terms of the industry, not us. But, you know, that's tragic and they won't return. So,
we lost 74?
Yeah.
Oh,
and one of the sort of surveys we did at AIF, because I sit on that board, is looking at, you know, what would the difference of VAT be? You know, if you weren't to close your show, but you had, if you had VAT relief, would you then, you know, continue trading? And the margins are that thin that would have made a massive difference, of which half those shows probably would have been saved. So I think it needs intervention. It's just a very difficult narrative and rhetoric with government, understandably. You know, everyone's very critical of the budget. You know, everyone else is inheriting more costs. Everything costs more money, you know, and then we're going to government saying, well, we also need support. Yeah, I get it. It's a very difficult thing. But again, is it a short-term view? You know, you lose 200 shows by the end of next summer. You're getting no VAT off those 200. You know, would it not be best to get, well, 12.5%, whatever it may be, 5%, you know, of everybody? I think, you know, once you start getting into the maths, as a long-term play, you'd encourage more people into the sector. More businesses will survive because, you know, they're reliant. There's all the supply chain are wholly reliant as well on these shows going ahead. So yeah, I think we need something. Some sort of relief, and I'll keep talking about it. But, you know, people understandably are very like, well, that's never going to happen. But unless we do something, we can't just give up.
I mean, is that narrative even been listened to? Is it even on the table?
It's been on the table. It's been off the table. I think there is a genuine interest. I think the fact that they understand the sector, whereas previous governments maybe struggled with what even festivals were. I had some very frustrating calls with various MPs. You know, or they would make linkages immediately to Glastonbury, which is an anomaly. You know, we can't keep making comparables. It's very different. Their business model is very different. Whereas the new government are more receptive to culture. I do think they understand it, and they do understand the value. I think the challenge is, well, where does, you know, it's the money side. You know what I mean? The public purse is stretched as it is. You know, we're under mass pressure as a country. You know, and then only recently we've seen we're not in growth. We're actually, you know, it's in suppression almost. So there are some huge challenges. But I think without it, and without sort of artists as well getting on board, then we're going to lose huge swathes of independent culture. You know, and that's what I advocate for, is more independent. You know, I'm not about getting more conglomerate shows.
Yeah. And do you do much overseas?
Yeah, so we got obviously offices here in Hoxton, and then we're also based in Miami. So we do shows in the US, mainly in the East Coast. Although more recently we've started doing shows in Nashville, so it's like mid-America, and yeah, more shows on the East Coast for next year. I mean, the States is quite hard to break, but for us, you know, we've been doing it for 2-3 years now, and starting to see some real traction. And we're a great export in terms of like the UK. So yeah, we are doing more out there, and the opportunities are, I feel, quite, they're good. You know, they're fairly buoyant. market. I think there's more and more shows coming to fruition, whereas here we're not seeing lots and lots of shows. We're seeing shows go and then being replaced by another name.
Yeah.
It's not a new show, if you know what I mean. So.
Yeah. And I suppose a lot of people in our industry, well, in my circles I've been speaking to, they're looking at markets like Dubai as well, and there's so much going on there overseas. What's Miami like in comparison to the UK, just for our industry as a whole?
I mean, it's got lots of shows coming in, and I think only in the last 4 or 5 years it's really started to ramp up, whether it be like Basel Art Week, obviously F1. It's becoming more of a sort of event-led city. I mean, things like Nashville, I mean, they trade off events, and the thing about the States is, they definitely get it. Nashville, there's the VP of events for the city, gets it, and they make millions of pounds out of events, and they have all sorts of different events, not just country, everything. I mean, we do the world's largest recruitment show, for example, there, but it's very festival based. It's in a big park in the city. So I think they get it. I think the culture is quite different, I should say, or very different, is just things like suppliers, like they all really appreciate you and my team and just say, it's great to work with you, thank you for the money. I've had calls here where I've asked the supplier, can you come and bring some other supply?
Yeah.
I appreciate it's overnight, but there's something like weather or there's some factor that's changed the environment and we need you. And then, ended up all my team ended up in arguments. I was like, well, we're going to pay you obviously for the service. Do you know what I mean? We're not like asking for free. You're in the game of earning money and supplying supply. So whereas there, like this year, great example is there was a weather system about 200 miles south of Nashville for the show, and overnight we managed to get, I can't remember, like 200 meters of tentage installed, supplied, because it was going to rain horrifically, and it did. But it saved the show. The client's really happy. But I feel like if I'd had that same conversation here in the UK, it would have been a lot more challenging.
Wow.
So over there, it's well received, which is great to see. I mean, it also has challenges like anywhere in the world, but and also it's the same language, so it's a lot easier. We've done lots of work in Europe, and that can be challenging. You definitely need